me, I spent 20 years in the customer experience space. It's like, great, I have an unfair advantage. I've designed these like amazing programs for folks like Coca-Cola and like Fortune 500 companies. I can go in a room and have that conversation with anyone about customer experience. I'd much rather focus on the thing that I spent 20 years learning than like me going off and trying to create something where I have absolutely no experience.
Welcome to Next In, where I have Jonathan Corbin, the CEO at Maven AGI, here to speak with me today. Welcome, Jonathan.
Great to be here, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like today, I'm excited to talk about your journey. Obviously, getting started and becoming the CEO of Maven AGI wasn't necessarily an easy one. There's probably been ups, there's been downs, and there's been everything in between. But before we get into that and we dive into your story, I honestly just wanted to ask where you come from today.
In Boston, Massachusetts. I think summertime in Boston is probably one of the most pleasant places to be actually during the summer months. So you have a nice breeze coming in off the water. I think Boston is perfect sized city. It's clean. It's nice. A little cold in the wintertime.
Okay, so I've been to Boston once, and the time I was there in Boston, it was for like the HubSpot conference, which I got to see like Reese Witherspoon, Derek Jenner, like at the HubSpot conference. But before that, Chris Evans was preparing to have his wedding, and I ran into the whole squad. I ran into like Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth. I forget who the dude with the arrow is. That's apparently.
Is that Marvel?
Yeah, it's Marvel. It's like Thor was there. It was like the whole Marvel Captain America gang.
Okay.
I forget the guy that has the bow. That's like Scarlett Johansson's other alternate. I don't know the dude. I don't remember his name. He's a side character.
He played in The Town, right?
What?
He played in the movie The Town. Did you ever see the movie The Town?
Yes, he definitely played in the movie The Town. I just can't remember his name. But in The Office, who's the guy from The Office that's like Pam and
Jim?
Who's Jim? Who's
I don't know. He plays in.
Apparently, he's going to be a Marvel character sometime soon. But Jim, the actual Michael Scott, not Michael Scott. I don't remember his name. I should be better at this. I should be better at this.
I definitely don't fit the profile of a cinephile.
Yeah. So okay. So if I go to Boston today, what is like the number one thing that I have to do in Boston?
I mean, you have to have seafood, right? Like it's on the water. It's known for seafood. You have to do that. So I would start there. I'm a little bit of a foodie, and that's why I go to the gym in the morning, so I can like eat whatever I want later on.
Fair. You're like, I got to go to the gym to get all my lobster.
You gotta get a lobster roll. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Jonathan, what I wanted to start with is obviously, again, becoming the CEO, you started somewhere. So what inspired you to even be on that path, right? So I don't know, even if we had to go all the way down to college, like how did you get to where you're at? I'd love to hear a little bit of your origin story.
Yeah, I think it actually starts a little bit earlier than that. When I was super small, I was like, I don't know, 8 years old. I was like, trying to find ways to make money as one does. And we lived about a block from the beach. Now, it's not like Miami Beach, South Beach. It was like the beach in South Boston. But in summertime, there's a bunch of people out there. And it was like, wow, there's a money-making opportunity here. There's all these people out here. And some of them don't have sunglasses. Like, easy to identify your target audience. People are willing to pay, a decent amount of money if you're like, you don't have sunglasses, you're in the sun. And so figured out a way to go buy sunglasses wholesale and just walk along the beach selling them at 8 years old. Like, hey, give me $20 for a pair of sunglasses. So I think like the entrepreneurial journey started a little bit earlier than most people, way before college.
You're like, I'm a hustler on the beach day one. That's
yeah, exactly. Like, mom will be back, come back with $100. Just like, what are you doing? But yeah, I think that's like where it actually started. And then kind of continuing through college, I went to school here in Boston. And then I graduated. I actually was a software engineer when I started off my career working for a company called Sybase. And then, I actually kind of moved into go-to-market software. And I think it was like the beginning of my love affair of like all things customer experience, where, you became fascinated with like the difference the customer experience can make for businesses. It can really make or break them. And it drives like customer longevity, upsell, cross-sell, all these other things. And I think for most businesses, that's where it starts.
Was there like a moment where you were like, hey, like this really sparked it? Like when you really think back at it, where you're like, customer experience is affected by this thing, and that was like, ooh, this was like really the thing that lit your fire?
It's funny because it actually, while I was in school, I was like, there was this random project that I was working on with one of my classmates where we were like, hey, we were doing this project with a hotel, and we're like, we could completely personalize every visitor's experience. Where it's like, we'll identify people by their license plate number. We know the people who own it. We have a profile of it. We give it on like their, Palm Pilot or whatever the hell that was at that point. And you have this perfectly personalized experience, and it was like completely automating like your wait staff through the restaurant. You can have your favorite drinks waiting. And so I think it actually started way before I started work. Just like thinking about ways to optimize customers' experience. How do you turn tables over faster in restaurants? How do you get people faster through your checkout lines, things like that. So
and your whole view is like, how could somebody enjoy the beach better with some sunglasses on, so they're not getting like their eyes penetrated by the sun?
Yeah.
They're gonna be exhausted at the end of the day if we don't give them sunglasses.
That was the beginning. Customer experience today.
That's pretty funny. So you went from, because man, you've had an incredible, obviously, again, you're the CEO of Maven AGI now. You're a Techstar mentor. You were a global VP at HubSpot. You were a VP at Sprinkler. You were an executive over at Marketo and Adobe, and obviously you've had multiple startups that you've founded. You worked at Wonderman and did some consulting. So what led you to go from, all right, so we started at Sybase and pre-sales and engineering, and then you've got to have an opportunity to level up quite a bit throughout your career. How did that happen?
I think it's like really kind of paying attention to what's going to move the needle for your organization, understanding like what are the metrics that the company cares about, and so generally, you start to understand like what's important to investors, what are the metrics that are going to matter to the street if you're a publicly traded company, and then making sure that your team is actually focused on delivering those. Seems like that makes an impact. I think it's very easy to get lost in the minutiae of what's happening in organizations. But if you're managing a team, or if you're an individual contributor, understanding what metrics are actually going to move the needle and focusing on those, I think people are willing to invest in you if you're willing to do that. And it's not just kind of like internally within those organizations, but also when you look at companies that are saying, hey, we understand the metrics that the street wants to see. We're going to focus on those metrics. Your actual investors are going to invest in those as well. So I think it's really kind of taking things back to the first principles approach. What are the metrics that are going to matter? Focusing on those. It's easy to kind of get lost in like the politics of large organizations, and like there's a whole bunch of kind of things that come at you on a day-to-day basis. You should do this. You should do that. And if you can create a North Star that you're focused on and say, this is the thing that matters to our investors. This is what matters for us as a company. This is the thing we're going to focus on. Everyone is going to align with you on terms of being able to deliver those outcomes.
Yeah, it was like really interesting. I was scrolling through TikTok as one does nowadays. Shouldn't. I think they call it doom scrolling now. Nowadays, right? I was doom scrolling, aka I was just in the middle of the night. I was like, I don't know how to do better. Anyways, and there was a TikTok of Elon Musk's ex-wife that was talking about like he believed his that Elon's superpower is like this ability to say no to things. And so like what I'm hearing from you even is like, so we have these core KPIs and we have these core metrics that the street wants to see, the company wants to see, the investors want to see, like everybody wants to see. Yet everyone likely has team members. They likely have peers. They likely have friends. They have all of these other people. They're like, cool, let me share you my busybody idea. Like my thing that could be like this cool, really big distraction that sounds kind of sexy, but like theoretically nobody really wants it. It's like that ability to just go like, no, we need to be mission aligned. We need to be focused, and we need to understand that these are our KPIs. So the answer is no, that doesn't align with our mission. That doesn't align with our goals. That doesn't align with the KPIs that are important to us today. So where did you develop that discipline is sort of where I want to, like, I'm hearing it. I'm like, well, how did you develop that discipline? Was there a mentor? Was there a coach? Was there an influence that you had in your life that helped you kind of like see that and really rally around it? Or is it just like an instinct that you eventually developed? Like, I usually believe that it's usually taught. I believe it's more than an instinct, but I'm curious where you got it from.
I'm a voracious learner and reader. And so like I learn a ton from people who have like done this stuff before me. And I think it's interesting, I think I've read a bunch of like stuff, Buffett and Charlie Munger and Elon Musk, of course, like we've all, is like one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time. And so you go out there and you read a ton about like what has been able to kind of move the needle for other people. And I think you learn from that. I think for me, the eye-opening moment was actually, I was managing a team at Adobe, and they were coming to me and they're like, hey, there's like kind of a non-ending list of requests that are coming up from like higher up in the organization. Do this, do that, do this, that. What the heck do you want us to do? And you're like, yeah, I can see that. I see the same emails that you are. And I don't know, it's crazy. Like, what are you supposed to do? If you do all these things, you're never going to be able to actually, kind of get to the results that we're looking for. And I was like, look, this is the thing that we're going to focus on. For us, it's going to be revenue retention. If you focus all your efforts on that, that's the only thing I'm going to hold you accountable for. I will take care of all the other noise. And so we were the top performing team every single year at Adobe. And I had an amazing team of folks there, and they stuck with me for a very long time. I think a number of folks are still there actually that were on my team then. But it was just the focus, right? And you look at some of the quotes from like Steve Jobs and like Tim Cook. It's like, hey, Apple says no to good ideas all the time, so we can focus on great ideas. And the same thing is true for every other organization. We weren't operating at the same velocity and the same scale that those guys are, but it holds true whether you're managing a small team or a large team.
Yeah, I always thought it was fun. So I wrestled for 16 years. I was like really passionate about wrestling for a long time. But like as I watched the greats, right? Like as I watched all the people that were like really, really good at their craft, I think one of the things that I noticed the most was every single one of them really only had 3 moves. Like they had 3 moves, and those 3 moves happened to be so stellar, so perfect, so amazing that it's like everybody knew what those 3 moves were. And almost everyone knew how they were going to lose. Everyone also knew how that person was likely going to win. And people like in the Olympics would train for 4-year increments to go, how do I beat that person at those 3 moves? And it's like there's almost this self-fulfilling prophecy that that thing is so good and they've refined themselves so well that you just can't beat it. Like it's almost impossible to beat. And it sounds like you were like, hey, my team, we focused on that one KPI, which was employee retention. We made sure that our team was so freaking good at that we beat everyone else. And we made sure that we moved the needle in a really strong way. So it's like you found your team's 3 moves for that particular craft. And we're like, let's double down on that. And let's make sure that we praise that, we raise that, and we amplify that.
Yeah. It was customer retention, but I think it's interesting. It's like I love the sports analogy, and I think it's true whether you're talking about wrestling, boxing, basketball. I remember seeing a quote from like Kobe Bryant, and it was like, hey, the good basketball players have 1 move, the great ones have like 2 to 3, and like consistently, it's the same thing in every sport. Where it's like you focus on the things that are going to matter the most, are going to be the most impactful, and then you create variations off of them for everything.
Yeah, and so I guess for you, like throughout your time, right? I like to talk about failures. I think failures are like amazing opportunities to learn. Like I love when I fail. I love when I make mistakes. I don't like to repeat them. Let me be clear on that. Like repeating mistakes is atrocious. But like I think being able to take risks and chances allow us to grow. Is there a mistake that you've made in your past potentially that you believe was something that allowed you to like exponentially grow and you were able to learn through it?
I think I don't know if I would define it as a failure, but I think it's like not actually being able to get to the outcome that you were looking for. And so this is my second startup. The first one, we started, and I think we went after a massive opportunity. For us, we said, hey, we're going to create an app that helps people find the closest place to park. Lots of people have cars. Lots of people need to find parking spots. And we want to be able to interact with them in terms of understanding destination intent, where they're going, all that other stuff. But there was like a shit ton of stuff that we actually didn't understand about parking. We didn't understand kind of what are the incentives behind the people who are operating the lots? What was the buyer's behavior? We knew nothing about it. And so like my takeaway from that is like, hey, if you're going to go start a company, go start one in a space where you actually the industry, you have an unfair advantage. And so for me, I spent 20 years in the customer experience space. It's like, great, I have an unfair advantage. I've designed these like amazing programs for folks like Coca-Cola and like Fortune 500 companies. I can go in a room and have that conversation with anyone about customer experience. I'd much rather focus on the thing that I spent 20 years learning than like me going off and trying to create something where I have absolutely no experience in.
You're like, this is a cool brainchild, but like, I actually don't know if I'm solving the right pain point here. So it's like, do you know what the pain point is, and do you know where a value metric is going to be, where somebody's actually going to pay for it?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. Like for our first startup, I think we understood the pain point. We understood like what was the thing that people were willing to pay for. What we didn't understand were like incentives and what the drivers of behavior were. And so like we learned a ton about that because like we're going in and we're talking to people that are like, hey, I'm a parking lot attendant about like dynamic pricing, and they're like, dude, I'm paid an hourly wage. Like I don't care about whether we have more cars in the parking lot or not. And so it's like, you learn a ton about that industry when you're like going in that and you're like walking around on foot and talking to parking lot attendants. It's like maybe not the most interesting thing in the world, but I can tell you all about like, parking and all that fun stuff now because, you learned a ton about it. But no, I think it's like, if it's your kind of your first startup, go after the areas where you have an unfair advantage.
Yeah. And then so kind of going into this next one, like this next startup, Maven AGI, like when you think about, you're taking a chance and you're getting ready to do it again. Did you ever have like, I don't know, some people have role models and some people are like, I didn't have a role model, but I had books that I read. And these were the things that really inspired me to like unlock myself. Like, was there a role model in your past? Was there a book? Like, how does that work for you?
I think there's like role models for different things. There's folks that you work with who are like really great leaders. There's people who are maybe great entrepreneurs. And I had the opportunity to work with folks like Roger Thomas at Sprinkler. He started the company and got to work with him and see his vision for what he wanted to create firsthand. I got to hang out with Brian Halligan at HubSpot. When we were a much bigger company, or 700 million in revenue, and just hear firsthand from him, like, how do you go about starting the journey? What was it like in the early days? And so I learned a ton from those guys, but also a ton from reading. And then there's other areas. It was like, how do you learn how to be a good manager? How do you learn how to be a good financial officer for the company? And so like Kate Bucher at HubSpot, learned a ton from her. Jitu Matani, he was opened up all the regional offices for HubSpot, learned a ton from him around how do you like build a sales team from the ground up? How do you go into a new country? How do you generate demand? So I think it's like you find all these like great mentors throughout your career, and you continue to learn from them, and hopefully you stay in touch with them. You continue to learn from them as their careers evolve.
So how often were you reaching out to people, whether it was internal at your company or external, just asking for help, asking for support? You're like, there's these unknown entities. And you mentioned a couple, right? You're like, how do I grow a better sales team? How do I become a better manager? How do I go to market in new countries? Like you just dropped like 5 or 6 really big challenges. There's a lot of people that are probably listening today that are like, yes, that, like, how do I do that? Like, what was your approach and what was kind of your methodology as you ran into one of those problems and you needed to seek out help, whether it was a book or a mentor, whatever it might be?
I think, I honestly did a really good job of taking advantage of my position to be able to learn from folks, where it was like, hey, these are things that I want to know. Like, how did you do them? Because I want to do them down the road. Like, I want to, like, you have this firsthand experience of people who went through this amazing journey of like building this $2.2 billion in revenue company. And they've seen the entire journey. And so you've seen it from being like, 20 people or like boiler room style, like ringing a bell, to like, you have offices in every major country and you have customers in 175 out of 179 countries. It's like, there's very few people that actually get to see that entire journey. And so I was like kid in a candy shop. I'm like running around, like pulling this book off the shelf and talking to this person. Can I put time on your calendar for this? And so it's like, take advantage of those opportunities that you have. And most people are really willing to like share the journey with you and to talk about their experience. What did they do? And like, what was the deciding factor? And how did you go about hiring, your sales leaders? And, what's the ratios that you were looking at? And what were your expectations early days? And so like, there's so much you can learn from that. Of course, times change, things, metrics change and all that stuff. But learning about like, what's top of mind? What are the learnings? What are the takeaways? What are the mistakes that you made along the way, so that I don't make those mistakes, and hopefully I make less of them as a result of hearing some of their feedback.
So when those meetings happened, were you sitting down waiting for them to put time on your calendar, or were you proactively going after them being like, hey, like, I really want your time. I want your knowledge. Pour in. Like, were you asking for it or were you waiting for it?
If you wait for it to happen, it's never going to happen, right? It's the same with customers. You're like, listen, you start a company and you're like, I'm going to wait for people to come to me. You will be sitting there for a very long time. It's like the best salespeople, like they're going to find you. Like they might show up at your front door. You're not exactly sure, but they might DM you on social. They'll call you on your cell phone. They're like emailing you. They're like, listen, like I'm going to find you and I want to have a conversation with you about how I can help you. And the same thing is true if you're going to be aggressive about learning. It's like, what are the things that I want to learn? Where do I want to go in my career? And what are like essential for me to like, what are essential skills that I need to have in order to do it well? And so like, who are the people that can help me with that? Being aggressive about going after them. And I think if you are a student of history, like, history is littered with entrepreneurs who did the exact same thing. I think, Steve Jobs did the same thing with the CEO of Atari, like went and hunted him down. It's like, hey, I'm not leaving until you talk to me and share some of your experience with me. And so I think it's like, finding those people who are going to be able to make a meaningful impact you can learn from. And it might be like, there's a lot of additional opportunities to be able to engage with people you might not have firsthand exposure to, whether it's on like Twitter or LinkedIn and other places, to learn from things they're putting out there.
Yeah, one of my biggest, I'd say one of the most controversial statements I hear from people all the time, and I try to coach them on this, I try to mentor this on this, and some people just don't want to hear it. It's like when somebody says, but my work should speak for itself. So if I'm doing my job, if I'm holding myself accountable for my job, somebody should seek out me and tell me what I need to do to get promoted. When
you are doing your job, right? You're paid to do your job. That's what you're paid for.
I don't understand why, like some people, it blows their mind when I was like, yeah, like you got to pay, like you're hired in that seat to deliver. Like the expectation is, whatever, another sports analogy. Your goal is to touch the line. Matter of fact, I have an expectation that not only do you touch the line, but you exceed the line. That's your job. Like if you want more than that, and if you want to grow and you want to be mentored, seek and ask for help. I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like every single time I did seek somebody out because of their performance and I tried telling them what I wanted from them, it always came in a place of resistance, or they're like, I don't think I see eye to eye with you. And you're like, well, why am I reaching out? I think I've gotten burned as a CEO where it's like, I've gone out of my way to try to reach out to the folks that I think should ask for help because I see a lot of potential in them. But unless they see potential in themselves, they're never going to ask for support.
There's an old adage of like, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. It's like seeing the potential in people that don't want to be mentored. It's like, hey, you're going to keep doing the thing that you're doing until you decide that like, I need to evolve past my current circumstances. And I think if you go back to the sports analogies, for example, and you look at the best players in the NBA, how do they spend their off season? I'm going to go find someone that can help me to improve my game. There was this like crazy cool photo of Jaylen Brown, like lifting weights and bouncing a ball in a pool. Maybe some part of that is actually true and helpful, but it's like, look, like the guy was the MVP of the NBA finals, and he's out there like working his ass off during summertime. And like, why would we as corporate citizens be any different? Like, if we want to continue to evolve, we have to find people that are better than ourselves.
And I don't know about you, but for me, it's like when I have a peer, like when I have somebody that comes and asks me for help, like I'm biting at the bit. Like for me as like CEO, like I'm biting at the bit. I'm like, I just want someone to ask for help and I'm ready to rally up. But I think I've learned, probably like you over time, where it's like, if I'm reaching out to them and trying to pour into them, it comes with resistance. If they're coming at me and asking for it, it's like, ooh, I'm ready to raise a rock star. And like, this is, I get to level somebody up and they want it and they're ready for it. And like, I'm always like, yup, you raise your hand. I'm a raise your hands culture. And I try to tell people that. I'm like, you're a raise your hands culture. I'm going to help you the moment you ask for it. Matter of fact, I might even be so jazzed up, I might be up till midnight helping you because you want it. And if you're willing to do it, I'm willing to invest. And I don't know if you're the same way, but I get super excited when somebody asks for help. It's one of my favorite things on the planet.
What's funny, Shane, is that earlier on in my career, I spent a lot of time thinking about like the lowest performers on my team. And I was like, you know what? If I can just say the right words to motivate them, to like get them off the bench and into the game, man, like they could contribute at like a massive level and make a big difference for my team. And I think over time you realize like they're in last place for a reason. It's like they're not putting in the effort. And I think like, Michael Jordan exemplifies that, right? Like if you're not going to put in the effort, like, I don't know if I want you on my team anymore. It's like, like how do you define a winning culture? It's like, well, you have to set the example of what you expect from each other and you have to hold each other accountable. There's a ton of work that's been done around like the kind of, what is the backbone of winning teams? And it's about teams that hold each other accountable. And so I found that, like, having, a couple of people on your team who aren't contributing, who aren't learning, who aren't evolving, kind of just drags the entire team down. And so now I'm like, hey, great. If you're determined that you're not going to continue to better yourself, you're not going to evolve. To your point, you're not going to like raise your hand, ask for help, and try to like be better. This probably isn't the right team for you.
Yeah, it's like I can't train motivation, but I can train skill. I can refine skill.
Yeah.
I can't train effort. Like I can't train motivation. I can't train effort. So it's like those things have to come naturally. And if you're not naturally motivated to be on my team, if you're not naturally excited, well, it just means that you got to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
right?
and I think it's like maybe the mission doesn't excite you. Maybe like the leadership doesn't excite you, and that's fine. It just means that like they're in the wrong place, the wrong time. And I think it's interesting. One of the things that I did at HubSpot as we were continuing to evolve the team, and my team went from 238 people to almost 1,000 people during the time that I was there. And we said, how do we continue to get better? Well, one of the areas you can get better is actually around hiring. So you look at the folks that you're bringing in the door, and you said, well, what is the skill sets that we have to hire for? You have to have those in place, but maybe the effort has to be there. The other ones that we can train you for. And so we kind of did an evaluation. We chatted with our highest performers and we said, hey, what are the things that have been important to you in being a high performer? And it's like, being able to ask questions, engaging, like being aggressive, things like that. You can't teach that. But the other things, it's like, hey, can we teach you digital marketing? Yeah, absolutely. Like I can create a course on that and run you through it. Can I teach you, what is like the methodology for forecasting? Yeah, of course. Like we're going to teach you that. And so it's like understanding what are the must-haves when you hire people versus like what are the things that are nice to have that you can actually kind of teach over time is very powerful. Like being able to build a world-class team.
Yeah, because that kind of leads into what I was going to ask next, which is like, how do you find that balance though? Like when you're like, hey, like how do you balance technical fit from culture fit? And like, how do you evaluate that? And it sounds like you were starting to do that where you're like, hey, let's really figure out the makeup of these things. I know that what we've done at Next Level, but I'm curious, like, what are some of the tried and true things that you're even doing at Maven to where it's like, how do we make sure that we bring on the right folks? You guys are earlier stage, like every hire, it has to sort of be the right hire at your guys' stage right now, right? So how are you doing that today at Maven?
I think one of the things that what we wanted to do early on is we said, first of all, like, what are the things that are important for us as an organization? Where are the organizations where like me and my co-founders feel like we've actually had the best experience, and so we actually started with the culture that we wanted to create. And so I had an amazing experience at Adobe. I think it was very much kind of a performance-oriented culture where you treat each other with respect, but you also hold each other accountable. And so like for us coming into it, we said, hey, like we want to do that. We want to be in an environment where we're treating each other with respect, where it's like very clear criteria, like how we make decisions and we use data for that. And we want to build a world-class environment. And so we said, these are kind of the foundational aspects that have to be present in every hire that we bring in the door. Now, if you're a great programmer, like we want to chat with you. But if you're like, I'm going to treat everyone else like shit and I'm a great programmer, it's like, I don't think you're a great cultural fit for us. And so it's like,
don't need the architect in grandma's boy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like you want to work with very talented people who are great and skilled at what they're doing, but you also need to work with people who are going to be like additive to your culture and they're going to like continue to evolve that. I think one of the things you learn very early on is like, look, like culture might start with the founders. It's perpetuated by the people that you hire and the people that stay there. And so if you're hiring people that aren't actually going to like continue to hold each other accountable, they're not going to be performance oriented. They're not going to treat each other with respect and like, use data when making decisions, then you're going to have a culture that is like, looks nothing like what you thought it was going to look like.
Yep. So it's like if you hire somebody in leadership and you say like, how do you measure performance on your team? And they don't mention data once, you're like, yep, swipe left on that because they need to be the person that kind of is that mantle of holding the team accountable to where it's like, we're a data-driven organization. If you don't care about KPIs and if you can't tell me a KPI that's important to you, it's just not going to work. And I think it's far too often where there are founders where they're like, oh yeah, but like he came from Meta, or yeah, but he came from Amazon, or like Or yeah, but she came from, you know, enter in the next sexy name, the Netflix, the whatever, the other things or the other startups. And they're like, but like, we're going to excuse the fact that they don't match our culture because they have this logo and that logo benefits us. And it's like, that is one of the biggest mistakes every startup makes, which is
Oh
we're
yeah.
going to sacrifice our culture for like this other thing. We're going to put this thing on we're going to take off the culture off our mantle and we're going to rise up a logo. We're going to rise up like a funding partner they once had, like this once great thing that they've achieved. And it's like, well, they don't match the culture. It doesn't matter what they achieved.
And I think it's like when you're going through, and it's not just about like the impact that people have. That's one of the things that we interview for. Is like, what is the impact you've had of the roles you've been at? But the other thing is like, are you a systems thinker, right? And so it's like you can have folks who are like, hey, you know, listen, like, you know, I've succeeded in, you know, overachieving on my target a couple of times. It's like, well, how did you do that? And if you don't know how you did it, like maybe you were actually a product of the system, right? Like you were there was a ton of leads that came in and you were just swiping credit cards as fast as you could take them. But if you're like, let me take you through like my process of selling, starts here, it goes here, and like, you know, this is how I close deals. You're like, great. And you ask for multiple examples of where you've been able to enact that and how you've seen it emerge. And so it's like finding people who are able to like create a process around doing things. I think is really valuable at an earlier stage.
Yeah. And so I mean, I haven't even asked yet, like, what does Maven AGI do? Like, what are y'all about?
Yeah. So we're a Gen AI platform for customer experience, starting with customer support. And so, you know, part of the challenges that I had while I was at HubSpot is that we just like grew in a very massive way. We were one of the 5 fastest growing B2B SaaS companies ever after $1 billion in revenue. And so we weren't quite like, you know, like hiring people off the street, handing them a laptop and phone and being like, talk to customers, but it was like, yeah, not dissimilar to that, right? And so one of the things that, you know, as you know, we continue to grow, it was like, hey, Jonathan, you're going to have a team of like 7,000 people in order to like engage with all the customers that we have. And just to put it in perspective, you know, when I left HubSpot, we had about 220,000 customers. I think there are about 250,000 customers now. Salesforce has 150,000 customers. So it's like, it's by far the biggest CRM company in the world. And so our CFO there was amazing, Kate Bucher, learned a ton from her. But I also was like, it was part of the impetus for creating Maven, because she would come into the budget meetings and she'd be like, you need to figure out ways to save money and to like scale in a non-linear fashion. And you're like, how the heck am I going to do that, Kate? Like we have this formulaic thing for building companies. It's like, you know, you have X number of salespeople, they bring in X number of revenue. We have X number of account managers because we have X number of accounts. Like that's how the system works. And so I started chatting with folks that I knew. So like one of my co-founders, he built Google from 0 to 1 billion users on the engineering and product side. And I was like, how did you create this like massive personalized implementation? And how did you do it at scale? One of the other friends of mine who was at Stripe, and he was running the Applied ML team there. And he was focusing on like, how do we kind of create systems around like engaging with users and had early access to GPT-4. And what we quickly realized, like, hey, engaging with customers at scale and achieving nonlinear growth is a challenge for everyone across the board. It's a horizontal problem. And so, you know, we went out, we raised some money, and we said, hey, we're going to create a platform that allows people to do that. And so we kind of came out of stealth in June with an OpenAI case study talking about some of the folks we're working with, like HubSpot, TripAdvisor, Row, ClickUp, a bunch of other companies, where we're actually helping them using our AI agents to answer as much as 93% of their customer inquiries with no humans involved. And so it's really cool what we've been able to do in a short period of time. We're just getting started.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So where is Maven going from here, right? So I guess, are you guys hiring right now? Or are you growing right now? What, you know?
We are hiring. Yeah, we're hiring. You know, we're about 30 people now. We started at the beginning of this year. I think we were 10, so we're growing really rapidly. And so, you know, we're always looking for great engineers. We're looking for great sales folks, good marketing folks, really focusing on growth right now. So that's a big area of focus for us.
Fantastic. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you directly, Jonathan, or your team, how should they approach that? Yeah. Let's say they listen to this and they're like, heck yeah, Jonathan sounds awesome. I want to be able to be a part of this thing. I want to be able to help him grow. Like, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, ping me on LinkedIn. It feels like I'm always on there, or on Twitter. My handle is JC1, so easy to remember.
Cool. Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I know we've got to close up, and we could probably talk for like 3 more hours, and I think a lot of people can learn a lot of things from you. But as Jonathan mentioned at one point, is like, if you want some advice, ask for some help. So maybe you reach out to him. But Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us, talk about your origin story here and how you got Maven started. And I really appreciate it today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good chat, Shane. Talk to you later.